What's up, YouTube? So today we are writing a score for a fictional sci-fi action game. So this is part of the WA Productions and Venus Theory contest. This is not a sponsored video or anything. I just thought it would be a fun thing to get into. I'm going to quickly put a clip here of the finished product so you guys can hear what we've done before getting into the video. Okay, so first and foremost, I want to talk about a couple of things. So it's really important to read the brief with these kinds of things. Read it once, twice, 3 times. Fully understand what the director or the developers are asking out of you, because it's really painful to do the whole thing only for them to be like, wait, we actually asked for something else. Then you kind of have to rework your entire project, right? Which is obviously not ideal. Often you can kind of skip 1 or 2 of those recalls by fully understanding the brief upfront, asking any of those kind of questions which you feel are unclear before actually getting into the project. So this is a little bit of a bad example because here the brief is pretty unclear, and obviously I can't talk to the developers or, you know, the people who are running the contest because it's a fictional thing, right? So this is a bad example, but it just made me realize that when working in these kinds of situations, just fully understanding the brief before getting into the work is the pinnacle. Often when we see a headline or something like this, we already have in our mind like, oh, you know, what can we do? And we impart our own creativity and that kind of thing, only to later on be kind of confronted by the idea that these kinds of works are often a combination of the developer or the director's creativity and yours. So it's often good to balance these kinds of things beforehand. Anyway, so like I said, it's a bit unclear. It says here, use the provided stinger from the contest files. They do provide you a bunch of samples, but none of them are really marked as stinger. And from what I hear in a lot of the other entries, there doesn't seem to be a common thread. So I don't think there's a single sample we have to use. I think we can kind of just use some of the samples from the folder that they've sent us, right? So that's what we're going to do today. What I want to start off doing is kind of just mapping out a sort of main rhythm, a main theme. So that means we're not fully leaning into the sci-fi aspect of it. It's not going to be all spacey and pads and ambient. There's obviously going to be an action element to it. So there has to be kind of some kind of higher energy, intense part of the track. And they've also asked for it to be 1 minute and 15 seconds up to 1 minute and 30 seconds. So we can start arranging everything with that in mind already. Start to pick the samples from the pack that we think are going to suit this vibe. Start to place placeholders in the arrangement where certain parts need to be. So I haven't quite decided on a tempo yet. I think we're going to go something slower, but maybe add extra rhythms in. So like a slower tempo with a faster rhythm, if that makes sense. And so here what we can do is we can kind of start to place a couple of placeholders here. I'm just going to add a blank audio track. We can put clips in where we think might be important parts which we want to highlight, for example. So here we've got about 3 bars or 3 of this kind of size, right? Which is actually 8 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah. So just dividing it in the timeline with the amount of time that we have. Let's say, for example, if we aim for 1 minute 15 seconds, and then we have a couple of seconds on either side to work with, right? So if we work within this time constraint, we have about at 75 BPM. Like I said, I haven't quite decided, so this might change. But we have about 3 parts of 8 bars each. So we can maybe think about this in terms of like intro, setting the scene here. This can be an intense part, and then this can be a kind of wind down. Okay? So we already straight off the bat know, like, in terms of the composition, how we want to arrange certain sounds, and we know that we want to build up to maybe an intense moment here for these 8 bars, and then kind of dip down again. So yeah, with this mapped out, I feel like things don't seem as much of a daunting task as they often do when starting out. When we think, oh, now we got to write a score. Obviously, in the real world, it'll be a lot longer than 1 minute and 30 seconds. But just looking at it here, things seem much easier, right? We just need to write these 3 bars or 3 loops, actually just kind of 2 with a variation here as an intro. It just seems much easier, right? The task at hand seems much easier. So what I like to do is, in Bitwig, I'm sure Ableton and other DAWs have a similar thing. We can insert a time signature change here, but then not actually change the time signature. And what this does is it kind of shifts all the bars along, and this allows us to add a little bit of maybe like a sweep in or something beforehand. And then we can run the loop like this, and then we have a couple of seconds for a sweep out afterwards. Let's listen to a couple of these samples and arrange them. Like as we hear them, we say, okay, this could work as a splash at the main part. We kind of arrange it based on this structure, right? They say F, but I'm not quite sure that those are actually both in F. Okay, I like these soundscapes. These can work. Let's just find a couple, put them in, and then we can start writing some music around it. Okay, I think that's about it from the sounds that I like from the pack. I'm going to add some of my own samples here that I think might suit. I've got a couple of atmospheric samples here from my latest sample pack that I think could suit the vibe quite well. Let's put in some sub impacts here. Okay, I think here we need to kind of build up the intensity to a moment here. We can use reverse splash effect for this. Although here, I think, let's not go with these. We start to introduce like a pulsating lead line or something here, I think. I'm going to start removing the stuff that we're not using. We're writing in F today. I think here I want to try lay down some Osmo stuff. I'm just going to kind of just go randomly here through some of my favorite presets. Usually what I'll do is I'll add a channel and then duplicate and then record in and then duplicate, just so that I don't have to keep adding a new channel every time, you know? want to try to create some kind of rhythmic thing that goes to the rhythm of this main accent of the zero. Dum, 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 dum. But I don't want to do it with traditional kicks and samples and that kind of thing. I think what I want to try to do is create a grid that we can kind of do more synthesized low frequency kicks and that kind of thing to really suit the sort of sci-fi vibe here. So here, let's set this to a sine, and we can create, for now, let's just add in a MIDI. We can just duplicate this, and let's just remove the low velocities now. Let's set this to F. So what we got so far is sounding really, really good. I feel like it's just lacking a little bit in the percussion department. I feel like those big, epic cinematic drums are such a huge part of creating that sort of epic action sci-fi sound. So I found a library called Ferrum, which is absolutely incredible for this kind of sound that I'm looking for. Great cinematic drum, percussion sounds. And this is the free version, but it still has so many different useful sounds for this kind of thing. We can also edit the sounds in various different ways. Each sound has a ton of different round robins, so you can really, really get an epic sound. So I'm just going to play around a little bit with this, find some of these sounds which I feel like fit the mood, and record a couple of takes and see where we go with this. So with these kinds of things, I find it really helps to play in the sounds, especially when you have lots of round robins and velocity triggers and that kind of thing. You really get that extra sense of realism when you play in an entire like 8 or 16 bar loop of this, as opposed to putting in individual samples. most of the time when you're putting in individual samples, you're kind of incentivized to copy paste a couple of times to speed things up. Whereas if you just hit record, play these notes, and then quantize it, each of the sounds will be different every time, and you'll still have it bang on the grid. Sometimes you don't want to quantize. Sometimes you want that kind of humanized sound. So sometimes you can kind of go in and edit each one individually slightly close to the grid if you want to. But for this, we're just going to speed up the process by quantizing. So we can select everything and Alt-Q. We pull up the quantize menu. I think 1/16 straight is good for this. And that'll just shift everything slightly better onto the grid. And you'll also notice sometimes I played like different notes by mistake, like they were overlapping, and so that sometimes gives you kind of more dynamics, different sounds. Even though it was a mistake, it sounds good, and I'm going to leave it there. So I also noticed that as I played more, kind of got more into the groove and started adding some more elements in. So you'll notice here, there's nothing happening here, but then at the end of each bar, there's a little accent. So we can maybe slide some accents in over here in the beginning. So over here, we might want an accent. We can actually steal this one and just drag it over, because here I feel like there's too many happening. As I was getting more and more excited, I started playing more notes in the sequence. So it'll be every second. Okay, so what I like to do with these kinds of things is layer them. So for example here, I'm going to duplicate this entire contact patch, and we're going to add in some accents. The reason why I do this is because I like to process them in layers. So for example, this big sort of main on the beat hit layer may need like slightly different EQ and compression and that kind of thing based on the sort of accent layers, and I feel like it's just so much easier to split them up so that you can process them individually. So here, for example, I feel like the differing velocity layers creates a little bit too much variation in the volume, so we can kind of just slam this into a limiter to kind of get a good overall volume for this layer. And so now splitting them up, this layer won't have the same kind of limiting. So we're not confined to a particular sound for the overall percussion track, right? That sounds cool, like one layered in and then one without the layer. Bum bum. Dum 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 dum. Like that. Yeah, you can hear, yeah, definitely the quantizing is going to help. And now I want to put in a final layer to kind of like resolve the whole sequence. So here at the end, you can kind of hear we're hinting at like a kind of da-da-da-da-da-da. And we can also do a couple of rolls, like stuff like this. With these kinds of things, a little trick which makes it a little bit easier to play in if you want to do like a faster kind of rhythm is to take what you have and stretch it out to double time. Okay, so let's move this here where there's no sounds. Now it's easier for us to edit in, or now it's easier for us to actually play in rolls and notes in between if we kind of just follow that slower rhythm. So here we can actually quantize to the 32. Okay, now we can put this here and then squash it halftime. Sometimes you'll have to go in and actually edit these velocities because they may sound too unrealistic. So one thing I like to do is use the pencil tool, hold Alt, and we can kind of do these crescendos. Sometimes you want to vary them a little bit though, because you have obviously left and right hands. One is stronger than the other. Is there main hits on these though? So do we need these two here? Let's see. Yeah, we have a dim dim, so we don't need those two. Okay, that's sounding good. Okay, I think we need one last layer here. There's some spots where they overlap, where I just want to switch up the sounds that are playing, so it sounds less like they are overlapping. Maybe we can do a slight cut of the subs here to let this kind of cut through a bit better. And then I was also thinking what could be cool is like a long power chord, like a long sustained power chord to really give it kind of that action feel, sort of just on the one. So long sustained power chord. So this is shredded Hydra, really, really good for this kind of sound as well. I own very few Kontakt libraries, by the way, very few, but the ones I own I kind of have picked because I really like the sound. This is a bit snappy on the transient. I want to reduce it a little bit, I think. Let's put an attenuate here. maybe we can actually boost the lows here. I feel like we're actually lacking a tiny bit of subs. Let's go with a more clinical EQ here, I think. I actually want to group these together. Okay, so we got some good percussion and low end driving the track. We got some good harmonies, got some good sound effects. I feel like the one thing that's maybe missing a little bit here is a little bit of melody to kind of drive the overall storyline. So I'm thinking like a string pattern sort of ascending all the way through each of these bars. So say, for example, if we have just something simple like this. I'll change the sound maybe. I'll change the sound, but I just want to maybe map out the notes so long. So I'm thinking where like the low end of the pattern can maybe stay the same. We maybe have a couple of different strings, like a bass and a cello doing like the lower haunting sort of rhythm here. And the higher notes can maybe like ascend on violas and violins. Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking of something like that, where over the entirety of the bar, it can just step up in the notes in the scale, and that's just gonna kind of help to carry the sort of story of the track that we're writing, but it's also going to help to create a overall crescendo where, here, for example, there's everything kind of comes together, but it feels like there's just something missing to tell the listener that, okay, now is the peak before the drop, right? So obviously, like, we have the riser and those kinds of effects, but I feel like with this kind of thing, we really want to do it musically as opposed to with cheap tricks, like with sound effects and risers and that kind of thing. I feel like those kinds of things should just complement the actual arrangement. We'll go up to the F here. Oh man, that already sounds super epic. So what I actually want to do here is let's duplicate this, and we can delete this MIDI, we can drop this MIDI in here and just remove the high notes. So here we just have the low notes. Let's put in a different sound here. Instead of viola, we can go with like a cello. Then let's maybe duplicate the lower layer. It'll definitely help to put in different velocities, of course. Here we just have the same velocity going over and over again, so it does start to sound a bit repetitive. But I kind of want to figure out what is the accent. We want da, 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 or da, da. I think we want them to descend. Maybe we can have one sort of legato string just accenting the first of each of these. You know what I mean? I actually want to use Bitwig's Humanize MIDI module here and just set the timing to very, very low amounts here, plus and minus, and then velocity as well, low amount. So it still follows the overall pattern of velocity that we're putting in, but it will variate ever so slightly. Let's duplicate these for the low strings as well. Maybe we can do the same thing here with the highs, where we have another layer doing highs. Let's remove these lows. Maybe we can choose a different instrument here, like a violin. And then maybe here, because there's like a kind of similar rhythm going, we can kind of follow the rhythm perhaps with a string that kind of leads into the next part. Yep, that's sounding good. That's sounding good. I think it's just like a couple of minor mix things here and there we can do to kind of clean it up a little bit, but I think I am happy with that for today. I'm going to literally just listen to this on repeat for a couple of hours and see if I can hear anything that maybe doesn't fit. Actually, there was one more thing I wanted to do. I wanted to add in a couple of reversed hi-hat samples to kind of give certain parts a little bit of accent, specifically like the sweep in parts, like here for example. This can really help to just add a little bit of sizzle into sweeps and drops. So let's just reverse this. Cool. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time. Please don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Cheers.